Therefore, no physical meeting location will be available. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using the URL on the agenda. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial the number on the agenda and enter the meeting ID. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized.
Okay, would you like me to call roll?
Yes, please
Board
do.
Member Calavita,
Here.
Chair Chang,
Here.
Board Member Harris has an excused absence. Board Member Leftwich,
Here.
Board Member Levine,
Here.
Board Member Mizell, Vice Chair Mizell,
Here.
Board Member Moore,
Here.
Board Member Owens,
Here.
Board Member Ramsey, I don't see you yet. Okay, we have quorum, Chair.
Okay, great. All right, so any questions about the agenda or changes to the agenda from the special meeting and from the last meeting?
No.
Shall we do?
Approving the agenda for tonight.
I approve the agenda.
I apologize, yeah.
Move to approve the agenda.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any objections? Not hearing or seeing any. So moved. Let's shift to public comment. Okay. Do we have folks who would like to speak?
Yes. First is somebody by the name of BPA Professional 2022.
May BPA Professional 2022 speak, please?
Good evening. On May 24th, 2022, Board Member Kitty Calavita addressed the Berkeley City Council representing the Police Accountability Board. She was given 5 minutes to speak regarding Council's consideration of modifying BPD probation and parole policy to more closely align with the law. During her 5 minutes of testimony, Board Member Calavita spoke of extensive research conducted by the PAB regarding the topic of probation and parole while citing no facts on the topic whatsoever. Her most disturbing and appalling comments came a couple minutes into her testimony delivered to the City Council. PAB member Calavita brought up, quote, the tragic murder of a Cal student, unquote. She went on to say that, quote, police received a credible tip that a former felon was involved in the murder, unquote. This statement was completely false. It was very important to know that PAB member Calavita has no formal law enforcement training, no experience in law enforcement work, and most importantly, she has no experience with investigating serious crimes, specifically the complex and critical steps involved in a murder investigation. Yet PAB member Calavita exploited this horribly tragic murder investigation in an attempt to further a political agenda. She acted as if she somehow knew of confidential facts of a murder investigation that in reality she possessed no knowledge of. She completely fabricated this story about a credible tip, or at best based her fabricated story by attempting to fill in the blanks from a general media report on this investigation. Her statements were completely irresponsible and offensive to the professional members of the Berkeley Police Department who hold their responsibilities of keeping the Berkeley community safe and investigating and identifying people responsible for crimes and holding them accountable for their crimes as their top priority, not to mention the disrespect for the family and friends of the murder victim. The PAB is meant as an oversight body responsible for the objective oversight of the Berkeley Police Department. Who is responsible for oversight of the PAB, or simply they're adhering to ethical behavior? What PAB member Calavita said was not objective, nor was it even close to being true or ethical. At minimum, PAB Calavita should make a public apology to the hardworking professionals of the Berkeley Police Department and the family of the murder victim. If a professional member of the Berkeley Police Department were to make a false statement to the City Council or any other public body, PAB member Calavita would be the first person to demand an inquiry and recommend discipline for that employee if it were true. My question is, what will the PAB do about PAB member Calavita? Thank you.
Okay. We have another member of the public, Ms. Saganor.
Good evening. I don't know how many of you were at the city council meeting last night. I followed it, and I was very glad to see that city council accepted the recommendations of the PAB in regards to the equipment ordinance without any second guessing or rewriting or changing the language or all that other stuff. I was just very glad to see that. And I hope that that is a sign of improved relations going forward in terms of respecting the work of the wonderful work of the PAB. I will just comment that something I heard from an earlier speaker, it's surprising to me to hear this. And I will say that, in fact, I'm sorry to say, I have heard members of the police make incorrect statements, including a member of the police department who was representing to city council on the subject of the search of people on probation without a warrant, who actually agreed for some time that the policy was that there needed to be a probable cause. And only at one point was it clarified that no, it's not probable cause. It was reasonable suspicion. So I understand people can say things without being incorrect, but I know that the city council came away from that discussion with a very different view of what the current policy was, based on thinking it was no different. In fact, this person was quoted in the Berkeley paper as having said, a police officer said that someone who was on probation had exactly the same status in terms of being searched as a quote regular person, which was not the case. So I know that misstatements can get out there, and I do know that PAB member Calavita has done amazing work. So thank you very much for your time, and I really hope to see better relationships going forward and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Palatnik?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
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 It wasn't unmuting when I tried. Anyway, first of all, the first speaker, if you're gonna attack an individual in that extreme way, why don't you give your name? You're singling her out. I know Kitty Calavita is a very highly ethical person with great integrity. I don't know the facts of what happened, but I did not appreciate having you call her out in such an extreme way. She's done excellent work, and I trust her completely. I don't know if she made any mistakes, but I don't think she deserves that kind of calling out. On another note, I want to congratulate Kathy Lee. Hard to imagine the PAB without you, and really appreciate your service, and don't know what we'll do without you, but wishing you the best. And finally, I was expecting at last night's council meeting to learn about the hiring of the new DPA, and apparently the hiring has not happened. So I'm hoping that any of you who know something about this, that you can say tonight and inform us what's going on without violating the confidentiality of names. I know the names need to be kept confidential, but the process, we have a great interest in. So whatever anyone can say publicly about what's going on will be much appreciated. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rodriguez, Anthony Rodriguez.
I don't think, I don't see his hand
Oh,
raised, and we are
You
going
are,
to
you're correct.
call
We have
on
Emily.
him later.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Rodriguez. Emily R.
Hi, I just wanted to quickly say the thank you to Kathy Lee. I'm sure there will be more remarks about it later, but I have been a witness to the PRC meetings and the PAB meetings, and she's always been very professional, very helpful every time I've had questions. And I just really appreciate all of her commitment to the city. It was amazing to hear the city council and the mayor address, honor her last night, and also her goodbye speech was wonderful. I don't know if we'll get to hear it again, but it's incredible to have given 30 plus years to this city in so many different ways. That I don't think many people can say that. And it was also wonderful to hear that you'll still be close, although hopefully you will get to unplug and after all this intensive work you've done. So I just wanted to thank you for everything, and we'll see what comes next, but I'm sure I'll be calling on you for insights and help. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have further speakers from the public? Not hearing or seeing any, we shall go out of sharing. And you should be off my screen now. And we will proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of minutes. Let's start with the regular minutes of July 13th, 2022. Are there any changes or comments? And just for the record, Board Member Ramsey is on the call now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Are there any changes or comments on July 13th? I'm not hearing or seeing any. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Is there a second motion?
Second.
Any
I'll
objection?
second it.
Oh, thank you, Board Member Levine. Are there any objections? Not hearing or seeing any, so moved. Let's move on to July 20th, 2022. Any questions or changes?
I had emailed those to the board members earlier today, and they are posted under supplemental materials on the agenda page for public.
Great. So for the special meeting, as you've heard from the director, those are accessible. If there's any questions or changes, please let us know. I'm not hearing or seeing any. So can someone move to approve?
I'll move.
Thank you. Can somebody second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any objections? Not hearing or seeing any, so approved. So moved via motion. Chair and board members' reports.
Oh, excuse me, before you do
Yes.
that, if you could just acknowledge that Lieutenant Turner is here on behalf of the department, and Investigator Beneva Thomas is also present.
Great, thank you. Lieutenant Turner, thank you for joining us, and DCA Chang and
Right.
Investigator Thomas. Thank you. So we have 3 folks on board. So for the chair's report and board members' reports, I don't want to take away from the important day today, which is Kathy Lee's retirement after 32 years. Wait, you had it down to years and weeks and hours.
I didn't have
Can you-
down to hours. It's 32 years, 10 months, and 2 weeks. Give or
And 5
take,
hours.
give or take a day or two.
Okay. That's very precise. Thank you. Before we proceed with that, and that's a moment of a lot of celebration and also some lots of us have, sadness of seeing a friend as we work with closely leaving the position. But of course, she will be around and we will be able to hopefully ask her for guidance. Before that, though, I want to note that it's really important in any type of public oversight group that all stakeholders engage in good faith. And that really means reflecting language that is both accurate and non-politicized. Politicization of policies and procedures that involve oversight generally does not help with constructive outcomes. And I'm hoping, as many have noted, that we can lower the temperature. And I also want to, again, as I have done before, vouch for Board Member Calavita, because her name has been raised a number of times in the public press, and also just today in a public comment that I did not find to be constructive, though I do support your First Amendment rights to speak, but I'm speaking about specifically constructive public engagement in a oversight body. And I think that all stakeholders should engage, but in a constructive and non-politicized manner to ensure that we can complete the mission and implement the mission of what the PAB is about, which you can read in the charter yourself if you have not reviewed that and if you don't understand what an oversight body means in a democratic country. So I want to, number one, again, support and vouch for the efforts and work of Board Member Calavita, who I've worked with very closely. And number two, I want to ask all stakeholders, which includes the BPA, and the person who spoke has spoken under the NOM name of BPA Professional 2022. I'm not sure what that's supposed to indicate, but I'm assuming it's suggesting it indicates a member of the BPA. Again, I want to invite the BPA, all members, that they are stakeholders, and that is so important to have union members at the table in a constructive manner during our public meetings, during subcommittee meetings, in a way where they're providing feedback on policies and procedures towards the specific mission and that is envisioned in the charter and stated explicitly in the charter towards constructive ends. So thank you, and I appreciate folks listening to that. It is meant really to encourage people to respect the space that is the Police Accountability Board and not politicize or demonize each other. Okay, that said, again, like I said, I don't want that to take it away from this important moment. It is Kathy's retirement meeting. She's going to be retiring. It's tomorrow. Is that correct, Kathy?
Friday's my last day.
Friday. Okay, so you have some. I want to note that and recall that Director Lee actually was supposed to leave a month ago, and she took that additional time to. She arranged something to actually extend out her work time in a way that meant that she has been with us for an additional month to help us navigate through some complex issues as we try to finish some of the work that we started in the past number of months and year as we kicked in the new Police Accountability Board. And I think it's made a big difference. And I want to personally tell her as chair and prior vice chair that I greatly appreciate that and thank you. And that I look forward to having many lunches and coffees with her in the future. As I said to her, to the degree that she can, and I consider her to be a mentor. And I'm serious about that, Kathy, because you've provided me always with very objective and helpful insight on the workings of the board and the best way to execute its mission. So I want to invite other members of the board to speak of their celebration of Director Lee's retirement. Board Member Ramsey.
Yeah, I just want to extend my congratulations to Director Lee for her retirement. Definitely well earned. And I will say, having served as the chair at the end of the the Berkeley Police Review Commission and the beginning of the Police Accountability Board, this transition just would not have been possible without her efforts. I mean, I think her efforts even before that and after that have been invaluable, but I'd say during that transition, which is, as difficult a thing as you can do, really getting up and running a new bureaucratic organization in the city, it was just absolutely invaluable. And I, for one, really appreciate it, and always appreciate the fairness and the level-headedness, and also just the stick-to-itiveness, and the discipline towards trying to move things forward. So I know I really saw, as the chair of both those organizations, sort of the level, that of effort that it takes. That sometimes, I saw a lot of effort when I was, just serving as a commissioner, but I really saw even more behind the scenes when I was the chair. So thanks very much. Well deserved, and you're going to be missed. I know you're not going to just disappear and be a ghost. So we appreciate that, but well deserved on the retirement, and thanks for everything you've done.
Thank you very much.
Board Member Lefwich.
So I just wanted to commend Director Lee for always conducting herself with professionalism and grace. I've respected, say, your ability to remain calm during the chaos. And all the years I've worked with you, I never once saw you lose your cool or get upset or impatient, raise your voice. And that's admirable considering all the drama that has occurred, especially over this last year. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your hard work, and congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Lefwich. Board Member Levine.
Yes, I want to express my gratitude as one of the not former members of the PRC who really needed a lot of guidance. And I relied on you tremendously, Kathy, for that. And it was your skills of listening well and responding helpfully were consistent and very much appreciated. I was writing something in anticipation of saying something nice, trying to think of the best thing I could say about you. And somehow my Yahoo email popped up and said, you have 608 communications or emails with this person, you, Kathy Lee. And I thought, well, that doesn't surprise me. That was from my beginning in July of 2021 until June of this year. So that is consistent with my memory of getting all that help from you and having you respond always. I was amazed at your ability to multitask in such a thorough and effective way. We'll really miss you, and I hope I can still call you. And you gave me all your phone numbers too, which was really remarkable and very generous. So thank you. I'm very grateful. You're much appreciated personally by me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Board Member Levine. Vice Chair Mizell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Director Lee, Kathy. I didn't go a really long time, but I know that's probably not your style either, not my style. But what I can say in a couple of minutes, obviously you've been, really as the chair said, a mentor to me, and just my basic understanding of governance in a city like Berkeley, how things work, obviously in those early stages on the commission, and obviously always being someone who was willing to be reached out to, and not simply because it was your job or because you're on the clock or whatever, but because you genuinely cared. And that's something I've always truly felt from you. And I really appreciate that we've had a lot of conversations. Some just procedural, some have been more of me just venting as I look back and I say, wow, thank you for being there in those moments as well. And certainly, as you know better than any of us, you've served in, during the commission and now really this whole transition and easily one of the most complicated positions in the city. A lot of different things to balance, and you have always managed to do it with a high level of grace and obviously a high level of competency. I won't lie, I'm not sure who I'm going to ask or what things will be like as you go. Even as we hopefully bring a new director on. I imagine it will take quite some time for them to reach your level of acuity. But certainly, from the bottom of my heart, please go off, enjoy the retirement. You more than deserve it. I thought my retirement would kick in after 3 years, involved in Berkeley. And I 33, that is remarkable. And to do it at the level you've done it is even more remarkable. So thank you so much, Kathy. I do have your cell. I'm definitely gonna give you 3 to 6 months though, to just chill. But eventually we will definitely get lunch. And I look forward to hearing how you're doing post this job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Mizell. Board Member Calavita.
Kathy, congratulations and thank you for everything. I was going to name the top 10 reasons that we're going to miss you so much, but I eventually gave up because there's so many more. And because it seemed like they hang around 3 central themes. The first one is competence. I have rarely met somebody who is so competent in so many different realms as you are, your competence personified, and I just really appreciate that. Second is your amazing efficiency, and these are things that everybody before me has spoken to, but your efficiency, getting things done and getting things done on time, even when there isn't any time. And this also happens when you're during our meetings where you have to do 5 things at once. You have to do the Zoom, you have to edit the documents as we all brainstorm, simultaneously. And somehow you manage to keep us all on track as well. So there's that. And then third is what everybody's mentioned, and that's your calming manner. I will miss that so much. You have the patience of, I don't know who it was, Job. You never gave up trying to herd us cats for impossible meeting schedules. And you have been unfailingly available to us when we call you yet again to inquire about this or that. And I think I'm probably the worst offender in this regard. I would call you so much, and I'll be forever grateful for your patience. And I don't know for sure, but I bet my calls were multiplied by 9 because from what I hear from everybody else, they've been doing that same amount of calling. You've always been there for us, and I so appreciate it. And I will miss you so much. Thank you over and over.
You'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Calavita. Board Member Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Let me be brief in this public setting. Thank you, Director Lee. Thank you for being a bridge for me to become part of this board in this world, to validate not only my perspective, but to understand that I brought a different perspective to the table, and for honestly welcoming it. I would not have been able to navigate the obstacles of this panel and of this board and of our many interesting subcommittees without you. Thank you for extending the invitation to NACOL, and then even beyond that, guiding me through that. It has been an honor. And I want to say deeply that, I am in your debt. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Moore. Board Member Owens.
I'm going to keep my comments short. I'm just going to say ditto to what everybody else said. I appreciate the support and guidance when I reached out, and hope you have a great retirement. That's it.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Board Member
Glad
Owens.
that's over.
Thank you so much, board members. And, we heard about Director Lee's grace, her patience, and her competency and her great work ethic and her calm. And that's something that I think really personifies the PRC, which was a predecessor to us, the Police Accountability Board, and it personifies the Police Accountability Board. So that kind of professionalism, for lack of a better term, on a public oversight board is the culture and tone we are all looking to and continue to support. And I think we have that. And a good measure of that is because of Director Lee's guidance. And when she retires, we will proceed, of course, as she has led us in that same manner. So I'm going to turn it over to the director for her report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you so much for all those kind words. And I put a spot on the agenda for myself for the end. So I'll be talking a little bit more about my time with the PRC and the PAB at the end of this meeting. In terms of our case deadlines, no new cases filed since the last meeting, and I'll talk more about the status of our cases when that agenda item comes later. And that would be 10C when I update you on everything that's going on. So I do want to leave you with a sense of where you and my office are at with any number of things. Oh, I'm sorry. The first thing I wanted to do was to introduce Anthony Rodriguez, and I'm going to promote him to panelist. And he's the new senior advisor for Mayor Arreguín. And he is here to say a few words to us.
Thank you so much, Director Lee. Congratulations on your retirement and for a successful tenure on the Police Accountability Board. Good afternoon and evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Rodriguez. I am the new senior advisor to the mayor of Jesse Arreguín. I am proud to be holding this position and to carry our work in public safety. My successor or my predecessor, Tano, did a great deal of work in getting us here and being a source of collaboration and thought partnership as possible. So I seek to continue that legacy and be a partner and a vested, interested party on behalf of the mayor's office when it comes to the work here and for our work in public safety. I can be reached at arodriguez@cityofberkeley.info. I am in my second full-time week at the mayor's office, but look forward to getting further saturated with the work that is already being done. So thank you for making the time. I'm really excited to apply my Master's of Public Policy experience from UC Berkeley, as well as applied research experience and mixed methods to this work and to guiding and advising leaders such as yourselves with public safety. So happy to chat and make time with anybody as it is relevant, but wanted to introduce myself and give you a face and a name to represent the mayor's office for this work. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see, moving on with my report. Ms. Saganor, during public comment, already advised that last night the council approved the military policy 709 that without any revisions, as you had submitted it to the council. So that was great. I had said in an email last week that because of a travel prohibition on using city funds for travel to certain states, Texas being one of them. Neither staff nor board members will be able to attend the NACOL conference, at least with city funds. So that was very unfortunate. And I already knew that that there were other people from other jurisdictions who weren't going to be able to attend. And I think one of the things that happened was the council quite some time ago, maybe 6 years ago, supported a state law prohibiting state-funded travel to certain states. And the way that the city has been administering that is to basically follow whatever the state does. And there are certain exceptions, and I didn't think any of those apply. The other thing that happens is more cities are added to the list. And I should say the reason for the ban is these are states with discriminatory laws against LGBTQ persons. So Texas was not on the original list, but apparently was added after that. So that's very unfortunate. What I have done is in the supplemental materials that are posted. I think I forgot to send this to you, but the next director can remind you that there is a virtual conference happening in over 3 days, 3 Wednesdays, I think, from October through November. So those would be opportunities for you to get that kind of training that NACOL does offer and that we find so valuable. But of course, it's not the same as actually seeing people and being able to gather with people from all over the country to talk about oversight. Board Member Calavita, do you have your hand raised for me?
No.
Okay. The only information that I have about your next director is that it is completely out of the hands of the city manager or her staff, and is strictly between the buyers group and the mayor and council at this point. So I hope they're in negotiations for somebody, because they did do council interviewed on the 18th, and I believe there was a public statement by somebody that they hope to make an appointment at last night's meeting, but obviously that didn't happen. They have one more meeting. They're having a special meeting on Wednesday, August 3rd. So I hope we get some news then. So it would be, I'm as anxious as you are about getting somebody in. So, and the last thing I want to say in response to our first public commenter is that I agree with the chair that we should be more constructive about our criticism, and then rather than just calling people out, how about having a conversation and saying, if you don't want to talk to Ms. Calavita, to Board Member Calavita, come to me and say, we had some issues with what she said, and or there were errors in what she said, and here are the actual facts. I have, this is not the first time we have heard the claims that whatever she said was incorrect, but I have not actually heard anybody say exactly what the erroneous statements were. So it would be nice to know that. And I would just reiterate, as others have, my support for Board Member Calavita as a thoughtful person who does her research. And if she made a mistake, it was an honest mistake. It certainly wasn't malicious. And I do not for one moment believe that she twisted the facts in order to advance the issue that she was raising. So that is all I have to say about that. And that's the end of my report. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you so much. And Chief of Police's report. I think Lieutenant Montgomery is here representing. Hello,
No, Lieutenant Turner.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant Turner. I
I
apologize.
don't look anything like.
No, no, you don't.
Thank you. Good evening. Chief Lewis is on vacation. She returns next week, I believe. So I don't have a message directly from her, but I have a staffing update and a few recent cases I'd like to discuss. And I know there was an inquiry on the request for information on the WEC case, which was the case where there was a male that died outside of the police department or later died at the hospital. And I don't have an update on that case. Chief Lewis will be able to address that when she returns. So I apologize, I don't have any information on that case. So with regards to our staffing, we are currently staffed at 149 officers. We have 3 people currently in the field training program. We just had a sergeant resign last week to take a position as a lieutenant at another agency. And we have several upcoming retirements and 1 officer likely leaving to another agency as a lateral. And we are currently in the testing process for the communications center manager position, and we expect to have that process completed soon. There are a few cases to mention. There was a serious injury collision this past Monday, July 25th at approximately 5 p.m. at the intersection of Telegraph and Derby. A pedestrian who was in the crosswalk was struck by a vehicle and sustained serious injuries. That person is still alive. The driver was cooperative. Intoxication was determined not to be a factor, and the investigation is ongoing. I wanted to just let you guys know that there was you may have heard about the collision of the 2 pedestrians in front of the police department on July 9th. Both of those individuals are still alive. Our fatal accident investigation team investigated both of those cases. We had a shooting on Monday, July 27th, just a couple days ago at just prior to 8 p.m. at the intersection of Channing and West. An adult male was shot in the foot as he was walking in the area. He was later transported to the hospital. The suspects were seen leaving the area in a vehicle. At least 1 resident was struck by gunfire during the incident. The investigation is ongoing. And last night, July 26th, 2 individuals interrupted a catalytic converter theft in progress in the area of 4th and Hurst. As the suspects fled the scene, they fired shots at the 2 individuals but did not hit them. And we are currently investigating that case. And that's all I have. And just would personally like to say congratulations to you, Kathy, and I wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Turner, not Lieutenant Montgomery. Subcommittee reports.
I have a question of Lieutenant Turner.
Oh, sure. Yes. Board Member Ramsey.
Thanks very much. Hi, Lieutenant Turner. Thanks for the report. I understand you don't have an update on the report or regarding the inebriated man. I think you said his name was WEC. Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
The WEC case. I just have a general question, not an update. Do you know whether a policy review was done? And I'm not trying to hide the ball here. Captain Okies had indicated on January 12th that the department would be, among other things, undertaking a policy review. And so do you know if a policy review was undertaken by the department?
Unfortunately, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't know the status of that.
Okay. The other question I had, somewhat related to this, he indicated that the policies that he believed were relevant to be reviewed at that time were I-15 and policy 900. I then looked to this last week on the police department's website and its policies. I did not see an I-15. Do you know what the status of policy I-15 is?
No. What's the exact name of that policy? Do you recall?
I believe it related to individuals in temporary custody, either that or inebriated individuals, but I don't remember.
No. I
He
can-
specifically referenced that policy. He referenced I-15 and
So it's not on the website?
no, there is
Okay.
I-15.
Okay.
Were you familiar with that before? Was that an old policy? Did it get
Yeah.
replaced?
Yeah, so I believe it was I-15 and as you know, we're doing the Lexipol transition and I don't know if that's one of the cases, or excuse me, one of the policies that was recently switched over. So I can look into that and get back to you about that.
I guess that leads me to another question. And I understand that, we've been doing the switch over for Lexipol. I was on that committee for actually years on the Police Review Commission, but are those, and we had talked about, that we're going to formulating a Lexipol committee for the Police Accountability Board, and that we were going to work with the department to review those policies before they were implemented. For various reasons, that committee has not been operating yet. Is the department currently switching to Lexipol policies without review from the Police Accountability Board? Do you know the answer to that?
Kathy's
know-
shaking her head, but go ahead, Kat.
I know the answer to that. The answer is yes.
Okay. And then also, is the department adhering to the charter amendment requirement that new policies be brought to the commission, to the board within 30 days of implementation?
I can't answer that question. I don't know if I'm not sure if the policy team sounds like they're not giving them to you. So that would have to come from Chief Lewis when she comes back to discuss that. I know I think you asked me that about that before. And so Chief Lewis is going to have to respond to that question.
And specifically, I think what I asked before, just to, just so you have it when you went back, was slightly different. There had sort of been an informal agreement with the Police Review Commission that policies would be brought to the Police Accountability Board before they were implemented. Chief Lewis had indicated in one of her letters that the charter amendment, she was guided by the charter amendment, which said that they had to be brought within 30 days. And, I had indicated that that was an outer limit. It was a minimum, but it didn't seem like a target to me, at least, to bring them in 30 days when that was the bare minimum. And my question had been whether the chief intended to bring them to us earlier. But I guess now my question is slightly different, which is one, are they implementing new policies? And two, are they even meeting the requirements of the charter amendment to bring us within 30 days? And then I guess the other question I have is regarding I-15 and whether that is actually still in place, or whether there was some sort of review done of policy I-15 that it should be removed. And then also, generally, was there an overall policy review done of the policies that were relevant to the Wecht case, which Captain Okies had indicated to us were policies I-15 and 900. I also looked at the Lexipol policies. I would just note that it also seems that 411, which is reasons for non-release in a cite and release situation, also would be relevant. That was one that had not been mentioned, but he had indicated the department was going to update us at least with respect to the policy review that he indicated the department was undertaking. And I know to date, we haven't heard anything. So I'm curious of the status of that, particularly given that the I-15 policy no longer seems to be in effect and there seems to be a new policy.
I'll pass all that along, and I'm actually going to be, I can't remember, I apologize. Is there a recess for PAB in the next month? Okay,
Yes.
So I'll be going to a different schedule, and so there will be another lieutenant that will be working this schedule on the PAB meetings. That'll be Lieutenant Reese, but I will pass this along and with all your questions.
Thanks.
Chair, may I respond to a
Sure.
couple things that Board Member Ramsey said? Now,
Yes,
I do know that some policies are being converted from the general orders to the Lexipol format. Would you consider that a new policy if there's no change or no real
Well,
substantive change?
I'd have to look from one to one, but I think virtually all of them have some changes. I mean, I've been on that policy committee
Okay.
for 2 years, and I think there is essentially no one that is just a precise 100% change. There has been an attempt to quote unquote burglarize the Lexipol policies, but the Lexipol policies are the default, not the not the I-95. I mean, they're being put in with Lexipol best practices. And then they're, supposedly, being Berkeley-rise to conform with some of the requirements of the general orders.
Mhm.
But I definitely think they're generally new policies. They may cover the same areas, but I mean, I'd be very surprised if I saw a verbatim policy that ditched the Lexipol structure and still used the same text of the general order.
Okay.
Other than, perhaps maybe the, taser policy or something, but I even think that's part of one. I don't even.
No,
think
I don't think
full
there is.
policy. Yeah, the
Taser.
prohibition on tasers within the use
Right.
of force and so forth. So,
Right.
word for word, I don't see
Okay.
that. Maybe I'm
So-
wrong and someone can point that out to me, but
I guess I'm just,
surprised if it's more than a handful.
I'm
And my
trying,
more concern is the new policies that are being converted.
okay, so you consider those, I mean, one reading of new is just brand new, so.
Well, yeah, I would be surprised if there are any policy that is very essentially brand new and not covered by an old policy, and that is not an amendment. I could imagine that there would be one, but I would suspect that 98% of policy that are switched over to Lexipol or other are amendments to previous policies that covered those areas.
Ms. Lee, I have the charter in front of me. It says the chief of police shall submit all newly adopted departmental policies and revisions to the board within 30 days. So it talks about not only new policies, but revisions.
Yeah, and I also want to say, look, that is the minimum. I mean, that is, that was to sort of give some, as I understand it, and having talked to, some of the council members who wrote it, that was to give an outside limit on when, sort of a no later than when the department would provide changes to us. It was not a target. And so there's nothing that prohibits her from giving them to us earlier. We clearly had an agreement with the PRC, an informal agreement, that those policies would at least be, given to us, and in the spirit of collaboration, at least allow us to review them and comment on them. And, so there's two things. One, is there going to be, and this is what I asked months ago and still have not got into an answer, and maybe the silence is the answer. But what I asked months ago was there a plan to actually provide us these new policies and revisions ahead of time so that we could comment on them? So I would like to get an answer to that question. And then separately to that, I have another question, which is if we're not going to receive them ahead of time, which we have not essentially for the whole year unless directed by council. So I don't really see that as collaboration. Are we at least going to see them within the minimum required by the charter? Which we have not either. It appears, if what I'm being told now is true, that there are policies being revised and implemented. We have not seen any of them, I don't think. So those are my questions.
Okay.
And it's particularly, the reason it's come back to forefront of mind, is, this policy review that we were being told was being undertaken in the WEC case. I think that's the name. I didn't know the gentleman's name before, but we have not heard any update on any purported policy review. But I did notice looking at the website that the policy that the department indicated to us needed to be reviewed is now removed from the website. I don't know if it was there before, but it's not there now. So I'm trying to understand whether there was a policy review, if there was one, what happened, and this relates to another item I placed on the agenda today, but I think it's incredibly important. A man died, and I think it's incredibly important to understand whether there were adequate policies in place or whether there are changes that may have been able to prevent that situation. And if there was a policy review that happened, I think I sure would like to hear about it and have a public airing. So the public, who I cannot think of a case since I've been on the PRC or the PAB that garnered more attention from the public than that one. And there was just numerous public comments calling for a review to find out what happened. And we were told by the captain that there was going to be a policy review and that we were going to be updated about it. And we have not yet heard about it. And so I'm trying to find out whether there was a policy review, and if so, what was done? And if not, will there be one?
Thank you, Board Member Ramsey. Without any other further questions or comments, we're going to proceed on to the next agenda item. And we'll proceed to subcommittee reports. Fair and impartial policing implementation.
That's my subcommittee, but I don't have any additional news. We've been attempting to schedule a meeting, but as we've been hearing, there's going to be an August recess, so we will recommence in September.
Okay, I'm going to take a break, and Vice Chair Mizell will take over.
Thank you, Chair. We're on item 8B, Director Search Subcommittee. Looks like consider dissolving. I would probably recommend against that myself, but let me ask Commissioner Levine, Commissioner Moore.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have tried to communicate, or I have communicated to Latanya Bello, the only person who will talk to me, because as you know, the buyers group won't talk to me since they're under contract with the city. I asked for an update, and I'm completely in the dark now. I think Director Lee gave more information than I actually have. I have none. And so I do not want to, the only thing I can say is I don't want to dissolve this subcommittee until I'm confident that something has happened consistent with our voice having some hearing in the process. I mean, if some candidate from left field that we know nothing about is part of the final picture, I'm gonna want to have some response to that. So let's, if we could just hold this until we find out what's happening, I'd appreciate it.
Board Member Moore.
I agree. I feel like we need to have a director in place before we can dissolve this subcommittee.
I agree as well. And as I mentioned, I guess I did not mention, but I know as much as y'all, which is nothing about what's happened so far. And I understand, obviously, it sounds like it's with council now, and they can take their time and do due diligence, but certainly a timeline at minimum and some idea of you know who may be in that group, or at least an idea of when we'll have a decision will certainly is helpful for the board, and more importantly the public. As we mentioned, or as I mentioned, there's really few more complicated positions in this city, and it's incredibly important that we know these details. So I agree with both of you. Unless any objection, we can move to item 8C. Okay, thank you. Chair?
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Mizell, for acting on my behalf. We are on to C, Regulations Subcommittee, and looking at old business, 9A. We will be getting there soon to finalize review. So how about D, Controlled Equipment Subcommittee?
Chair, I agendized consider dissolving, and actually that was premature because of item 10A. So if
which is discuss process and timing for reviewing
right,
BPD's
because
annual
there's
equipment
one
use.
more piece, which is the use report. And
Okay.
I don't know, one thing that I think the board should discuss is whether they want to kick it over to the subcommittee or whether they think it's manageable enough to all discuss to discuss as a full board. So if you could put that off,
Sure, let's put that off then.
okay, till that item.
Okay, until 10A.
Mhm.
So now we're on to 9A, which we had a special meeting about and we're working very hard on. And this is estimated for 1 hour, so we want to try to be as efficient as possible. It is now 8 p.m. We're 1 hour in, so we've moved along, but we want to work through this as efficiently as possible because we still have a number of other items on the agenda. Director Lee, do you want to pull up the?
I think that Deputy City Attorney Chang wanted to say a few words and then we can move into review.
Oh, yes. DCA Chang?
Yes, certainly. And good evening, board members. On this item of the proposed permanent regulations, I want to thank the board for the discussion and feedback and input that we received following our delivery of some preliminary advice last week. I want to also just chart out the path that we will be taking to provide further responses. Our office will be preparing a comprehensive memo analyzing the issues that have been raised, including the question that we discussed last week, which is about the board's authority to initiate investigations, as well as some of the follow-up issues raised by the board during our discussion. That includes.
You're on a Zoom call?
Those topics include some of the additional questions raised by some board members, including Board Member Ramsey's request for some guidance on potential avenues that additional authority could be granted, including whether an ordinance could be enacted, and if so, some model language for the ordinances. All of these issues are going to be part of a comprehensive written memo that we will be providing confidentially to the board within the next few weeks. And so I just want to acknowledge the issues that were raised by the board and let you know that we are working on providing further responses and that we'll get you those next month. One other topic. I know that some other board members have also been discussing the possibility of a closed session in order to discuss some of the legal advice that we've been rendering about the regulations. Our office will be looking at the exemptions that are available under the Brown Act that would permit a closed session and evaluating the facts and whether we meet any of the criteria for a closed session. And we'll provide further advice on that, and we'll do our best to facilitate that if it is permitted under the Brown Act exemptions.
You can DCA Chang, we have a hand raised from Board Member Ramsey.
I have just not a specific question for Deputy City Attorney Chang, but I have a question generally about the regulation. So if others have questions for him specifically, I'll yield.
Okay.
We get to a discussion about the actual regulations.
Thank you, Board Member Ramsey. Board Member Calavita, do you have a specific Chang's specific question with regard to what DCA Chang just raised?
No, I don't have a question of him. I had a proposal for moving forward.
Okay, then I'll come back to you and we'll move on to Board Member Mizell. Board Member Mizell, do you have a specific question for DCA Chang?
Yes, I
Chair
just
Mizell.
hope we could be provided some sort of written timeline, just that be forwarded to, I guess maybe not Director Lee, but to whoever will be overseeing those duties and to the board. Because I feel like, and just for my own good, I feel like we've had a lot of different conversations about what lots of different players in the city will be doing. So that'd just be helpful. Yeah.
Yes, our aim is to provide you the memo within the next few weeks, certainly during the month of August and before you return from recess and with sufficient time before your first meeting after recess to digest the memo. And in addition to providing you the memo, we will make ourselves available, both myself as well as Deputy City Attorney Iris Mattis, who staffs this board with me, as well as the City Attorney Farima Brown. All of us will be available to meet with you and to discuss with you one-on-one any additional questions that you may have after we send you that memo.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, DCA Chang. Back to Board Member Ramsey and then Board Member Calavito.
Yeah, thanks very much. My comment is actually on an aspect of the regulations. Can I share screen? Is that all right?
Yes.
I will. Okay. So, all right. So these are the regulations. I hope these are the latest, but I have a proposal related to who may file a complaint. Last week, we obviously got advice from the city attorney's office that the charter, as you know, the charter itself does not provide a authority for the board to file a complaint. And this is the language that was currently in there, grief about who may file. So this area right here, who may file. So it says aggrieved parties as well as eyewitnesses, percipient witnesses to alleged police misconduct may file a complaint. And so the key thing is it's aggrieved parties as well as eyewitnesses. Complaints may also be, this is where we had the language about filed by a board, et cetera, et cetera. So first of all, I would note that this language that said that we as a board by a vote of five members, interestingly enough to me, is in the interim regulations. I went back and looked at the interim regulations. And so that is actually the governing language as of now. I understand it seems that the city attorney now is saying that that language is not appropriate under the charter, but I will just note so people understand that is the operating regulation that we're operating under right now. And that was ratified by the council with, quite frankly, the advice of the city attorneys at the time as being permissible. But I understand, you know, people see things and it changes. But so that's one, that's there are the rules that we proceeded under in initiating the complaint, I believe, in the WEC case, which is the the gentleman who passed away, who was released behind the police station while he was inebriated, as I understand it. So in any event, this language is not, to the extent that it is not authorized by the city charter. And I'm going to switch over there real quickly. So here you have the city charter. This is 18A, which I believe Deputy City Attorney Chang is the language that he relied on last week, that he interpreted to say that the board itself is not able to file a motion. So it says the Director of Police Accountability and Board shall adopt regulations for handling complaints filed with the Director of Police Accountability by any member of the public. And I think he said to us that the city attorney's interpretation is that board members are not considered members of the public. And it says any member of the public alleging misconduct by sworn employees of the police department. So what I want to say is, one, I do think later we're going to come back and at least I'm going to suggest trying to give us some authority to initiate fact-finding investigations, if there's a way to do that by ordinance or whatnot. But in the meantime, okay, if we as a board are not able to, if we're being told that right now we're not being able to initiate a fact-finding inquiry, not initiate a complaint, but initiate a fact-finding inquiry as we attempted to do with Mr. Weck, to just find out what happened surrounding a situation that was of concern to many people. If that's the case, then I don't believe that this language here in paragraph 2, I can't highlight it, but then I'm pointing out with my cursor. So number 2, that who may file, we should not limit it to people who are eyewitnesses and percipient witnesses to alleged police misconduct. Because let's take the situation of Mr. Weck, and as I understand it too, someone who dies, their family can initiate it. But here we have a man who's in his 70s who's homeless, and I'm not sure if we know who his family is. He's passed away. And so you end up and there's no family and there was no eyewitnesses. So outside of the police department. So you end up in a situation where no one can initiate that fact-finding investigation. That just does not seem to me that it's possible that was the intent of the charter, as board member Mizell pointed out last week in the preamble to the charter. So if that is the case, and we're looking at the charter saying we're not members of the public, then I believe who may file a complaint should exactly track the language of the charter. And it should say any member of the public. So it should say who may file, any member of the public. And in this particular instance that I'm talking about, the WECT investigation, we actually had members of the public, we had numerous members of the public come on public comment and ask us and implore us to investigate this and find out what's going on. But we're essentially being advised that perhaps no one had the ability to do that. So if that's the case, and we can't get an ordinance that allows the board to, then I don't see why we should recommend language that limits who can be able to bring a complaint. So I would suggest changing who may file to any member of the public. That's my motion.
I would second that motion.
Thank you. So why don't we proceed with, and then we have two hands raised. Are there any questions about the motion? And I know there were two hands raised already. Board Member Calavita, Vice Chair Mizell, and now Board Member Owens. Who has a question about the current motion that's on the floor?
I don't have a question, but I fully endorse that. I was going to propose that myself, since the charter says that any member of the public may file. I see no reason why we should limit ourselves and narrow that window.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And Vice Chair Mizell, did you have a question about this particular motion?
Well, more of a comment. Yes, I would just second, I guess, third that as well on what Board Member Ramsey and Board Member Kelly have said. This was a big reason why I mentioned third parties being able to report. I believe at our last meeting, Board Member Ramsey did more astutely than me, and I definitely appreciate it. But essentially, if we're hamstrung in this way, which I will be waiting for the full legal advice before I can truly believe it, we should really change the language. I fully endorse what's been said, and to me it's clear that if we're going to actually do what I believe the voters of Berkeley believe this board was supposed to do, we have to be able to investigate incidents of this nature, and in the WEC case specifically.
Okay, thank you. And Board Member Owens?
I just have a couple comments. One is, I believe when we submitted our inner regulations, we had any member of the public, and I believe it was council that added recipient witness to that, if I remember correctly. Maybe Kathy, I don't know if you remember that, but I thought they added that language.
And that may be the case. I would note that the language that is in the interim regs allows the board to initiate an investigation with a vote of 5 individuals. That is in the interim, and well, not 5 individuals, 5 board members. So it's in that context that this limiting language has been ratified.
So I want to go back, and for me, there's a difference between initiating a complaint and initiating an investigation. I agree that we should have the ability to initiate an investigation, but I don't agree that we should have the ability to initiate a complaint. So I just kind of want to make that clear. For me, the distinction is an investigation is a fact-finding thing. We're not making any allegation about anyone's behavior. We're just doing a fact-finding. I think as a board, we should be able to do that. I agree with everybody on that one. But initiating a complaint, I think when you're initiating a complaint, you're making an allegation that someone did some behavior that's wrong. And I think it's unfair or to say we're going to allege someone did some misbehavior and then we're going to be the body that hears that. I just think that there's a conflict with that. So I feel strongly that we should not have the ability to initiate a complaint. I also feel strongly that we should have the ability to initiate an investigation.
Thank you for that distinction. Are there comments or questions about that, or the motion in general that's on the floor?
Can you repeat the motion again?
Yeah, my motion is that everything from, in this, who may file a complaint. Okay, right now, given the advice that we have from council, and I should say, board members, Member Owens, I agree with you about the initiation of a fact-finding investigation versus filing of a complaint. But right now, we're being told we can't even right now initiate an fact-finding investigation. So until we get that resolved, my suggestion is that everything from aggrieved party, and maybe it'd be better if Ms. Lee takes over the sharing and she can, actually do a track changes for this section.
Thank you. I was going to suggest just that.
So
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
that's formal complaints filed with the Office of Director. It's Roman numeral 2A2. And this language, so 2A2.
Mhm.
So I would say delete everything between aggravated parties.
Aggrieved.
I'm sorry, aggrieved parties through the keep going until to authorize an investigation, which is already deleted. Right. So I would delete all of that. And I would include any member of the public may file a complaint, which exactly tracks the language of the charter. Period. That is my motion.
And I
Okay.
second that.
Thank you. Good. Board Member Levine, a second. So with that, we do have a motion on the floor, and we have a few hands raised. We have Lieutenant Montgomery, then Board Member Leftwich, and Board Member Calavita.
Yeah, so right below that in section 4, it talks about the sufficiency of the complaint. And I'm not sure or not clear how a fact-finding investigation, if you will, initiated meets the sufficiency of the complaint. If the board isn't aware or the complaint doesn't describe misconduct. For example, there are things that happen in policing with no misconduct that have bad outcomes that people would be very concerned about. But absent the allegation of misconduct, it doesn't meet the sufficiency of a complaint. Does that make sense?
For me, is a
I
separate
understand
issue.
the complexity of not having a witness, but
To me, that's a separate issue. It's an allegation.
and I'm raising it as a separate issue, but
We
it's
need to
tied
deal
to
with
it because it is a complaint. It has to raise to the
Yeah,
sufficiency.
so any complaint filed by a member of the public will have to allege facts that, if true, would establish misconduct occurred.
As opposed to, this was a bad incident and we
They
just
can
like to look
allege
into
whatever a member of the public alleges must meet the standards for sufficiency of a complaint.
Can I ask the lieutenant a quick question? So your question related to sufficiency of complaint, does it have to do with fact-finding investigation?
Yeah, so like what I'm hearing is, the board or a member of the public hears about an incident that's concerning and they show up and they say, I'd like to file a complaint. They would have to, I hope, describe their complaint against a behavior that would be, if in fact happened, would be misconduct. The police get involved in a lot of situations where we get bad outcomes and there's no misconduct. And so, and somebody isn't alleging misconduct. It's just that here we are at a bad outcome and people want to know more. They're sort of curious about what happened and are concerned that something bad did happen. I just want to make sure that if then the board is accepting or the process is accepting these complaints, that it meets the sufficiency of the complaint in what they're saying, as opposed to, I'm just really curious about this, we should undertake it, if that makes sense.
I mean, I understand the issue that people would say, hey, people may come and make frivolous complaints or make complaints about things that they didn't know about, but that's why we have a sufficiency of the complaint standard. It has to get past the sufficiency of the complaint standard. But my point is that if we are being told that the board itself cannot initiate a fact-finding investigation or even initiate a complaint, or in vice versa, cannot initiate a complaint and cannot initiate a fact-finding investigation, then I think that needs to be counterbalanced by giving the public the maximum ability to bring complaints. They will still have to meet the efficiency standard. But if we're not allowed to vote by a majority to initiate some fact-finding inquiry, then I believe that it's important that we not restrain the right of members of the public to bring a complaint that was granted to them by the city charter explicitly.
Thank you. Are there, Lieutenant Montgomery, do you have further comments or questions on this issue?
Yeah, and I appreciate your point, and I think we're in agreement that the sufficiency of the complaint is going to be central to whether or not to accept a complaint.
Okay, thank you. So we do have this guardrail here, moving. Just remember, we do have this motion on the floor as we're moving through these questions. Board Member Leftwich and then Board Member Calavita.
I totally support the idea of broadening the language in this section to include any member of the public. I'm just wondering, and I guess this would be a friendly amendment procedurally, why we're keeping that last sentence, because the original language referenced complaints by the board. But if we're just saying any member of the public, I don't think we need to, I don't think that sentence is relevant. The heading is who may file. So I think it's sufficient to say any member of the public may file a complaint. And then I would just suggest we leave it at that.
Is that a friendly amendment then?
I guess the question would be whether you believe, I understand what you're saying, everything for deleting everything after accept, but do you think the entire sentence should be deleted? Or do you think we should keep complaints shall be signed by the complainant?
I don't think we need it there because there's another section that talked about the complaint form. So I don't think we have to put that concept here.
Okay, if we could see the other section just to verify, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, and we're scrolling
I can't
down.
remember who seconded it, but
I did.
Board Member Levine has seconded it.
In fact, it's the section that Board Member Levine had submitted some
Right,
draft.
I'm looking for it. Did I pass it?
You guys,
I think I did.
Yeah,
No,
it's at the very beginning. And in fact, I drafted some.
Oh, here it is.
oh,
It's
here it is.
above.
I see it.
Yeah.
I see it. So yes, I would accept that as a friendly amendment. And I don't know whether Board Member Levine will agree.
okay, let me just read this so everybody on the same page.
Let me just say something
Sure.
before. I just think I would need to. What I've done is I think Director Lee sent out my most recent edits to this section, which omitted the part where the complainant signs, which you want in if you take it out of the other of the part we're talking about, anyone can file a complaint. Frankly, I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in terms of whether it's necessary. It's a formality that doesn't have a whole lot of meaning, the signature part. But if it works, okay, here, this is, should I just read it? A formal complaint alleging misconduct by one or more sworn police officers of the Berkeley Police Department must be filed on a form provided by the Office of the Director of Police Accountability. Complaints must include language advising complainants they should seek legal advice before completing the form if they either intend to pursue a civil action against the Berkeley Police Department or its officers, or if they have a criminal case pending or likely to be filed, which is related to the complaint. There was a sentence that I took out because it seemed redundant and unnecessary, which it still does, but if it's going to facilitate clarification on this other section about anyone can file a complaint, I'm fine to put it back in. Board Member Ramsey, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of your motion? Because I think the important thing is that any member of the public can file the complaint. And whether they sign it or not is really a formality. This complaint form is really the formality of filing rather than substantive with regard to who, what, when, or where.
Yeah, I think that we should have someone at least acknowledge that they're filing the complaint. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
well-
my general idea. I would say I tend to would lean towards having them certified that to the best of their knowledge. I would even put, because of the situation with WEC, I would even put and on information and belief.
Or on information.
Or on information and belief.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine with me, in terms of, you want to add it to the complaint section that I edited? Or do you think?
I think,
better?
I mean, I'm fine.
It goes there.
I'm fine with your section. I just would keep that last sentence that the form shall require the complainant to sign the following statement. I hereby certify that to the best of my knowledge or on information and belief.
Okay, so.
I would add that in after knowledge, and then I would, as board member Leftwich suggested, get rid of the last sentence of paragraph 2.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a friendly amendment from board member Leftwich. And
Yeah, but
board
I'm
mem-
saying keeping that last sentence as we have it now.
Okay,
Wait, you want to keep,
But,
With the-
and also, I don't think we need those commas. I just can say surrounding or, so that to the best of my knowledge or on information and belief. I don't
to
think.
the
you
best
need
of my
a comma.
knowledge or on information.
Yeah, I don't think you need a comma before or.
Okay,
right.
the grammatical change.
But Director Lee, is the
Yeah.
language that precedes that the same as what I just read?
no. So
Pardon
we
me?
have to kind of go back and forth.
I think-
Or maybe,
I know,
let me try and grab it and stick it in.
Okay.
Okay,
thank
we'll give you
Okay.
a minute to,
I didn't have my
just give her a second to cut
Word
and paste.
documents, so I couldn't
Okay,
do the tracking.
and I'm gonna
Right,
do
yeah.
that, yeah, off screen, just in case I have issues.
Okay,
And I had one more thought about that new language, but it's not necessarily relevant to the motion that's. under
okay, let's
consideration.
finish the motion first, board member Leftwich, and then make sure that you're okay with the changes to your friendly amendment, and let's capture all that so we know what we're moving on.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I'm next,
Yeah.
right? I have a question about the motion.
Okay,
We
board member
haven't
Calavera.
we haven't had our closed session or, confidential memo from the city attorney's office. And I don't know that we want to give up on the idea that a board member or a subset of board members can file a complaint. I don't know that we should delete that off the top before we hear from final word from the city attorney, because there may be ways in which we can avoid the dilemma of being complainant and jury or whatever, There are 9 members. It may be that there can be subsets. And I say that for the following reason. It may be that board members are the only people who are privy to names of individual officers and so forth, which are confidential information. If we were allowed to do one of these preliminary inquiries and we find out information, we may want to file a complaint, and members of the public will not have the specific information that's required to file a complaint. I just don't know.
I
why
agree with
we
you
would-
100% on not giving up on that, but this,
Good.
maybe I'm moving, too quickly. I'm just, and this, maybe we should just table this because we don't have enough information to deal with this section.
I think that might
think
be a better
so.
idea. If,
Okay,
Yeah, so
I would
I
then,
really-
we can short circuit this. I agree with you. And so I'll move to table, or I'll, move to table my motion. So we'll
I
hold.
was actually, Chair, I was actually going to propose at the beginning of our discussion on this, that perhaps we should table further discussion of the substantive aspects of our regulations until we have the conversation with the city attorney. Because I fully agree with Board Member Ramsey's proposal not to limit ourselves to aggrieved parties and so forth. But I wouldn't limit the other part until we hear final word. I do think that there are a couple of places, in fact, Ms. Lee was going to give us her wording on, there was some place where she was going to give us some wording on a detail about what happens when we disagree with the director's findings and recommendations. There's that section that we could do, but I was going to propose that we wait until we hear more legal counsel to.
Well, I'll second your motion to table this entire discussion.
I will too, since I was seconding them.
So to table this specific conversation about this particular motion with regard to the anyone.
Well, I think it's
file.
even broader than that. I think it's
I was
to
gonna
table all
table
discussions
all
about the regulations.
Okay, so
all
I
the
want to double.
substantive-
Okay, so I want to double check on something with the DCA and also with Director Lee. DCA Chang, was the idea that you were waiting for a submission of a draft to then review to provide written analysis, or you're going to proceed without that? You don't need to have our regulations, drafts, changes, revisions.
No, so there's two separate processes, and they're independent of each other. One of them is to provide you a memo in the next few weeks, which addresses the question of board-initiated investigations, as well as related follow-up issues that have been raised by the board. And then separately, when the board is completed the process of drafting the initial draft of the proposed final regulations, our office will be doing a comprehensive review and providing you comments on those. So that doesn't necessarily, you know, of course, there's some related issues, but we're treating those as two separate processes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. That's clear. Board Member Leftwich, did you have something?
I would just request that the city attorney's office also look into the issue of whether the board could file a complaint and under what circumstances that might be possible, because there are two issues. It's whether the board can request that staff initiate an investigation, and then whether the board itself can file a complaint.
Isn't that what you're looking at?
There should be DCA Chang, that should be from last week.
Yes.
I think that was part of the, based upon board member Owens and some other, including board member Leftwich comments about splitting that distinction to ensure that there's an understanding of the nuances of procedures and review, investigatory authority. So we can, we do have, it sounds like we have a motion to table substantive issues on the regulations until we hear back, and that will mean 2 to 3 weeks in that estimated time range from the DCA. And that will be during our recess. And then when we come back in September, we would be reviewing the substantive aspects of the regulations and finalizing our regulations after reviewing and possibly having a conversation or requesting a confidential closed meeting regarding any legal questions that the PAB has on that memo. Does everybody agree with that and understand that? Is that the correct pathway? Director Lee is kind of shaking her head a little bit.
Yeah, I can't find my raised hand icon.
It's okay.
Okay, I thought that as we discussed this afternoon, we would have, the board would finish the regulations, any of the remaining items to discuss apart from board initiated investigations or fact finding. And that we would send that document to the city attorney's office so they could start their comprehensive review, which could happen. Obviously, they're working on the specific issues that have already been raised and that Mr. Chang has told us they're currently finalizing their analysis on. But I don't see a reason to wait on everything else. My view is just get it done and get it to the city attorney's office.
Okay, do you guys hear that distinction? So that's important. That's why we're having this conversation. The Director Lee suggests that we not wait on addressing the substantive issues. All issues, just get it done.
Apart from board
Apart from the
initiated.
board initiated investigation, this kind of thornier issue. Board Member Levine?
Yeah, I wonder if there's a hybrid here of items that are clearly not related to any of these, who can file a complaint, who can initiate an investigation. I would have thought that the section that about the description of the complaint form would be a no-brainer, easy. But then when this motion was made that we've now tabled, made it clear that it's also connected to the question of the content of the complaint and the form is actually connected. It makes me wonder if we're going to create something that's potentially going to need further edits once we get the advice and conclude what our powers are and aren't. Some duplication doesn't hurt, but a lot is inefficient. So I don't know. I speculate that these things are more connected than we might appreciate. But if perhaps Board Member Calvita has, or the people on the subcommittee could identify sections that wouldn't be impacted, then that makes sense.
Thank you. Board Member Leffis is one of those board members.
Yeah, I agree with Board Member Levine that unless you really look through the whole thing, a lot of it is connected. So I'm not so sure we can just pluck out those provisions and say, look at everything else. Plus, there are a couple of other controversial, maybe it doesn't matter. I think a lot of this is going to be controversial, but the two issues that we've already talked about are the most fundamental. But I do agree that we haven't looked at it that way. So it very well could be that a lot of the other language would need to be revised based on the ultimate conclusion regarding our authority.
Okay, thank you. I'm waiting for Board Member Calavita to come. She's on mute. Hello. No, you're
Sorry.
off mute now.
I
There
had
you
to
go.
answer the telephone. Yeah.
That's okay. What are your thoughts, Member Calavita? There's kind of thinking that either table this and not address the substantive issues. However, the interim director, Director Lee, did note that the plan was to kind of get this done and move it to the CA's office, where they can then do a comprehensive review, as well as provide the memo on those kind of thornier issues. That kind of waiting for this, there's a concern that maybe it's going to slow it down when you can move forward, and maybe later on you still have to edit, but we're going to be editing this anyways, is what I'm kind of hearing here. Some folks are concerned about that.
I suppose so, but it seems to me that the parts of this that aren't the substantive parts in question are the parts that we really need an answer from the city attorney on. And the other parts are, I would think, pretty, I don't know. I'm agnostic.
Sure.
It seems like all the things we need advice on are the meaty issues. And if we send the thing without those meaty issues, we're not really sending anything for them to analyze.
Yeah, I see what that's coming from. I also want to reflect, and this is not taking a position per se, so I kind of am under the feeling that we should kind of move it forward, but that if the city attorney doesn't have a document to work with that we've already kind of quote unquote finalized a draft for, then we're going to have this kind of back and forth for a long time. They're going to be coming back to us when we provide comment on little pieces and sections, versus we already gave them a set of substantive, big priority, in jurisdictional, kind of enforcement questions, enforcement authority questions, review authority questions. And then we have our edits here, which then they can review as a whole, as a document, noting that very likely they'll come back with something that, you know, we disagree with or think we need further elaboration to ensure that we understand where the law and legal analysis stands on our jurisdictional authority. In particular, could be challenging to do without an actual document. I mean, they have the document, but it's not like quote unquote finalized. They would be using this existing document, I'd assume, if we were just to bump it over. We could potentially say that, but then we wouldn't have had an opportunity to go over additional revisions. I'm going to really quickly, let's go to Board Member Owens, Moore, and Levine.
Chair, before you move on, could I just say one more thing? There is a section at the end on informal complaints and anonymous complaints, which we haven't talked about with the city attorney, and we haven't even reached consensus among ourselves. And so I think that's also something that should go to the city attorney.
Okay, after some conversation with the board, is that what you mean?
I guess.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone through the subcommittee with Lieutenant Montgomery present. So that's something that all folks should be aware of. Board Member Owens and Moore, and then Levine.
Oh, I feel like we should let the city attorney provide us with some guidance. And then go back and relook at this entire document, because I honestly don't want to put something in front of them that they provide guidance and then we change it based on, you know, the guidance that we're going to get that we've already asked for. So to me, it's kind of wasting their time to send it forward. And then they come back and give us information and we're going to change. Because just like you said, a lot of this stuff is interconnected. So why send them something and then they bring us an answer back and then we've got to go back and change what we sent before anyway. So why don't we just wait? And I hear what people are saying about, you know, the timing. I personally think these regulations we're probably a year away from having regulations. Seriously, just because the process we have to go through. Because, you know, we've got to get feedback from the city attorney, then we've got to incorporate that. Then they've got to review the entire document. Then, you know, we get feedback from the department and the union. And I just think we're a good year from having finalized regulations. So I don't see the big rush on this part. I'd rather we get it right and send a good document forward. So I would prefer to just wait for the guidance from the city attorney's office.
Thank you. Board Member Moore and then Levine.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo the same remarks and sentiments as Board Member Owens. Until we get until we're advised by the city attorney on some of these, I feel like it would be not only time consuming to play the back and forth, but also it's going to be hard for these revisions and additions and how we're going to adopt them. It'll make the process longer, in my opinion.
Yep. Thank you, Board Member Moore. Board Member Levine, did you drop your hand?
I took my hand down because I agree with what's being said now. This Board Member Owens and Moore, and I think there's some consensus coming through.
Yeah, that's right. I do hear some.
The only thing I would add is that we have to know the direction we want to go, and then we put that in, but we really want to be realistic about what we can ask for. And that's why we should wait for some advice.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee?
I wonder if Mr. Chang has any preference for the way the regulations are received. So right now, I'm hearing a lot of support for not doing any more work on these until the city attorney's office issues the memo that they're working on. I feel that there are things that don't involve the issues they're currently analyzing that you could work on. But I guess it doesn't really matter to me at this point. So maybe I just wonder if Mr. Chang has any input. That's all.
DCA Chang.
Sure. Well, we kind of defer to the pleasure of the board and what the board feels is the best way to proceed. What I can tell you is that we are prepared to review a version of the regulations that the board feels is otherwise complete, except for those regulations that address this question of board initiated complaints or investigations, which we're currently analyzing. We're receptive to and ready for that approach. And that's the approach that we had discussed informally with the director earlier today. But obviously, we are ready to work with the board in whichever way that you feel is the best way that you want to proceed.
Thank you. So mechanically speaking, that's the one thing I was raising. Would that we would be waiting for, first of all, we want to have a quick conversation about what questions, again, to clarify for everybody, including the public, what questions are being reviewed by the city attorney's office. Just really quick rundown. And then make sure we understand that there is an existing document. And if we're saying that we're going to then wait on it, that means that any other issues in the document that maybe we haven't fully vetted that may have some question we need to address with the DCA or the city attorney's office will have to be addressed when we come back in September, when we start digging back into the document after we've reviewed the legal memorandum. So just have to ensure that there's an understanding of that type of time frame. And I don't know if we're saying, though, that we want them to look at the existing draft as is, plus the legal questions, just the legal questions. I'm seeing some heads raising. So I want to make sure everyone understands that. It would be helpful to me, and I think to members of the public, to understand really quickly what exactly are the legal questions, again, just to get ourselves on the same page. But maybe we do that after Board Member Leftwich, her hand is raised.
Yeah, I agree with that. We should have some clarity about that. I also think we could make some progress tonight, maybe on 3 particular issues, the complaint form language that Board Member Levine submitted. I think Director Lee had provided some language, although I didn't find it and haven't looked at it yet, about when a time frame for when the director needs to provide complaints to the board as provided by the charter. And then the informal complaints that Board Member Calavita had provided some language, because the board has never discussed those. So I think I'd feel like we made progress if we had a resolution about those 3 topics. But I don't think we should send the whole thing off to the city attorney's office.
Okay, so how about we kind of have a conversation? Do those 3 items sound good to folks? Or there's anything else that they feel we can kind of discreetly address? Because it seems to be a consensus now that we don't want to dig into the substantive stuff, but there might be 3 kind of discrete type of tasks that don't trigger substantive issues that are tied to the legal memo that's going to be developed. Chat about that quickly. And then number 2, invite DCA Chang to really quickly just do a rundown of the questions that he believes that the CAs are going to be reviewing based upon our request. Does that sound good?
Can I ask what the current state of the motion is? Because I think the motion is like a friendly amendment, or at least I seconded what Board Member Calavita. I mean, I'm with Board Member Owens and the others who supported her that we should just put this off. I mean, it seems like Deputy City Attorney Chang says he's fine with whatever we want. So he didn't give a preference.
So putting it off,
So, I mean, let's put it off and move on to other stuff till we get the full advice, at least.
so
That's
pulling
my
it off
sense.
entirely.
Yeah. Maybe we can have a
So-
vote on that motion. I think it's board member Calavita's motion.
Yes, so I want to get clarity. So it's, what I had written was to curtail further discussion on the substance of the regulations until we hear back from the city attorney's office. But that means, are you drawing a distinction, board member Calavita, between, when you mean substance, what do you mean by substance?
I thought what I was seconding at least was that we were just moving on to another topic.
She used the term substantive, but we want to make sure. So-
I thought that we should wait on the substantive language, including the who may file and including investigations by the board and possibly even the informal complaints section at the end, which we haven't discussed yet, because that does talk about the board picking up the complaint process itself at a certain point for anonymous complainants. So my motion was to put off those substantive issues about which we're going to get answers from the city attorney until we hear from them.
Okay, but I hear other people saying, and I think I heard board member Ramsey say he thought the motion was to put off any further discussion of the regulations. Until we,
Yes.
is that what you meant?
Yes.
Oh, okay, you keep identifying a particular thing.
I'm sorry, I'm a little, but
okay.
Yes, I think that because I agree with board member Owens, as well as Ramsey, that so many of these things are interconnected, that it might be very difficult to pull out sections without having implications for other sections.
Okay.
That
Thank you.
would
So
be
the-
my.
Okay.
The motion is
Can I call a vote on the motion?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
the motion is to move on from this item. And who had seconded again? Just confirming for Director.
I did.
Okay,
Ramsey.
Board Member Ramsey. So can we do a vote, Director Lee?
Yes, we can. Okay, on the motion to basically end any further discussion on the regulations until a memo is received back from the city attorney. Board member Calavita,
Yes.
Chair Chang,
No.
board member Leckwich,
I guess, yes, I can see both sides.
board member Levine,
Yes.
board member Mizell,
Yes.
board member Moore,
Yes.
board member Owens,
Yes.
board member Ramsey.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, good. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. So, and it actually, do we want DCA Chang to review the items that will be going before for review? Some folks are shaking it just to, we're going to have like about, I don't know, like a month and a couple of weeks before we re-engage with this document. DCA Chang, would you mind going through the list in like rank order, like just very briefly, what the issues are that will be reviewed for legal memorandum?
Yes, so the memo that we are preparing will be addressing the board's authority to initiate investigations or to act as a complainant, as well as analyzing generally the board's authority in the areas of investigation and fact-finding. And so to the extent, right, that there might not be authority to initiate a complaint that could lead to a recommendation of discipline, does the board still have other fact-finding powers that could lead to other results, such as issuing written reports and findings? Related to those questions are also, if the conclusion remains that the charter does not currently authorize board-initiated investigations, how could such authority be granted? Could an ordinance be enacted? And what possible model language could be for such ordinances? And the memo will also analyze the effect of the conclusions to those questions on pending investigations that the board has already opened.
Thank you. Any questions? It looks like Board Member Calavita has her hand raised. And Board Member Ramsey, was that your hand from previously, or do you still have a question?
That was mine from previously. I'm sorry.
Okay, Board Member Calavita, then Leftwich.
I just wanted to make sure that that when we talk about board initiated investigations, it would be that the board would request that the staff initiate a fact-finding inquiry, which is distinct from the kind of formal investigation that follows a complaint. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and I appreciate
Okay,
the
that's all.
clarification. And one of the issues that we're looking at in the distinctions is what the different consequences are of those characterizations of it as a fact-finding inquiry versus an investigation, and of course the relation to a potential recommendation of discipline. And so those are some of the issues that we're looking at. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Leftwich.
My recollection is that maybe we were also asking the city attorney to do an analysis of the circumstances under which the board can use the subpoena power that's granted to it under the charter amendment.
Yes.
Other folks?
Yeah, so the exercise of the subpoena powers is part of that analysis, is in terms of the board's investigation and fact-finding authority.
Great, thank you. Board, I just want to check in with Board Member Owens too. Board Member Owens, you had provided a helpful distinction. Is this reflected in the questions that DCA Chang has reviewed for us?
No, I think he's going in the right direction with the difference, which I view the difference between a fact-finding investigation versus the board bringing forth a complaint. So I'm just waiting to hear back to see what guidance we get.
Great, thank you. Board Member Leftwich, is your hand still up from before?
Sorry.
Okay, are there any more questions or clarifications for DCA Chang? I'm not hearing or seeing any, so we'll proceed to the next item, which I believe we're at 10A at new business. So we have transition to permanent director of police accountability, the interim director schedule until retirement, which is Board Member Owens.
What are you looking?
I think
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm spacing. I looked at a. I had an old agenda pulled up. Several of them pulled up here. I'm back to the real day and month. We are now at 10A, discuss process and timing for reviewing BPD's annual equipment use report, submitted under the Controlled Equipment and Community Safety Ordinance.
May I start, Chair?
Yes.
So this is the last piece of that whole package of controlled equipment items. And you received, this was published, you have a hard copy if you still have your June 8th, 2022 packet. It's also posted as supplemental material. And I believe actually on Friday, I attached a copy to an email. So, and actually in hindsight, seeing that it wasn't that long now, I wish I had included in the packet. But anyway, the question is, in terms of process and timing, I should tell you first that this is due back to the council, well, within 60 days of when the use policies were approved, and that was yesterday. So 60 days is, I calculated as September 24th. So the council meets on the 13th and the 20th in September. You have a meeting in on September 14th, not the 13th. So there's a typo in item 10B. And actually, Chair, I forgot. I should have said that we should remove item 10B from the, well, maybe we could discuss it. I'm sorry, this is all interrelated because it has to do with timing. So we were going to, if I may, Chair, I was suggesting that you cancel your regular meeting September 14th, not 13th, and set it for special meeting for September 7th because of the NACO conference. But because we're not going to NACO conference, you might not want to do that and keep your regularly scheduled September 14th meeting. In any case, whether it's the 7th or the 14th, I think you would really need to have your recommendation done on the annual report to get it to council on the I guess the September 20th is would be the meeting before the deadline of the 24th. But as I'm speaking, for new items, it's a 30 something day lead time. And so you're not going to make that. So if this is considered part of a continued item, I guess it would be okay to submit it, after you act on the 7th or the 14th or the meeting of the 20th. But that's for somebody else to figure out.
Are you saying that if we decide on it on the meeting of the 14th and send it in on the 15th, that's enough time for the council meeting on the 20th?
Well, I'm saying I'm not sure about that. At least, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Can we just put it on their calendar for the 20th now, knowing that we got to get it done on the 14th, and that way we meet the timing to get it
that's a good question. Usually you have to submit, but I can figure it. You has to go to I'll find out, or maybe tell somebody else to find out. And then the other question besides timing, has to do with the process. Do you want to have the subcommittee look at it? Does the subcommittee want to look at it? Or do you think that it's manageable enough to do as the full board?
What are thoughts on that? I think Board Member Ramsey has his hand up.
Yeah, I think it's something that the full board could do.
Any other comments on?
I agree. And given the timing, I think that we need to just really bite into it without having a subcommittee.
Okay. Any other comments? I think that's probably right too.
Can someone confirm what's expected of us with the review of this document? What's expected?
That's a good reminder.
The ordinance, I don't have the ordinance at my fingertips. I can look it up. Anybody else could look it up. It's a requirement of the Controlled Equipment and Community Safety Ordinance. And
so is the requirement just that we review the use?
I think there are some factors to look at. So I'm trying to pull up the
if someone has it, maybe you could share it quickly.
Yeah.
I'm
Somebody
trying
else
to
might find it.
I'm trying to find it myself. If someone has it online, just let us know and they can share it. I'm trying to pull it up right now. Let's see here.
It's 2.100.050.
050.
2.100. Okay, thank you. The Police Accountability Board shall determine, based on the annual report, whether each piece of controlled equipment reported on has complied with the standards set forth for approval. in 2.100.040. And by standards of approval, that means the original approval that you already did. If it determines that it hasn't complied, it shall either recommend revocation of the authorization for that piece of equipment or modify the use policy in a manner that will resolve the lack of compliance. After review by the PAB, the police department, After review by the PAB, the police department shall submit the annual report to the city council, indicating its approval or lack of compliance for each piece of controlled equipment. So I'm glad we read that.
So that adds an additional amount of time there, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think the thing to do is just, you know, plan to move forward and do as much as you can in the time you have. I guess try to finish it on the 14th, assuming you're going to keep that meeting.
Okay. So
The reason, you know, I guess I could have agendized looking at it tonight, but I thought you were going to finish regulations, so.
yeah. Board Member Owens, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about looking at each used line item by line item and determine if it was used appropriately in the time period that we'll have at our next board meeting. I'm not sure if we would get through it just based on how we tend to tackle other items. So I have a little bit of a timing concern as to whether or not we can accomplish what the ordinance expects us to accomplish in one board meeting. So I would like to, I hate to say it, recommend that the subcommittee kind of give it a once over before it comes to the full board. I think that would be helpful.
Chair,
Yeah.
I'm rereading this. Within 60 days of the police department submitting an annual report, the Police Accountability Board shall place the report as an agenda item for an open session of a regular meeting. So now I'm reading that as an open session of a regular PAB meeting.
So we just have to agendize it for ourselves?
And then,
Reading that. What
yeah,
section?
That me.
That's what it seemed. Let's see. Maybe I should pull it. Should I pull it up for people?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Is DCA Chang still here?
Let's see. Yes, DCA Chang is here.
There.
Mr. Chang, do you, I know that we received some advice from Ms. Mattis earlier, and I don't know if you worked on any of the controlled equipment.
I recall having worked on this. I don't recall the specifics of the advice, but I can
Okay.
try to pull it up quickly.
Okay, what I'm trying to figure out is I believe Ms. Mattis provided some advice about the timing. And but I don't have that file with me, so I don't.
But do we know what is asked, what is requested or required by us?
Yeah, I'm gonna share screen so that you can see what I'm looking at. So everybody can see what I'm looking at. So it's annual report on controlled equipment, and it goes through what this is. A1 is what the police produces, and the report is submitted to comply with that. And then it says, and then here we are at B, compliance or revocation of approval. Is that big enough for people?
Where is this in our packets, Kathy?
It's not in your packet. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
But I saw it. You can get it online.
Right. If you go to the public records, and then from public records
Right.
to the BMC.
Yeah, that's how I got it.
Yeah. Mr. Chang has his hand raised.
Yeah, DCA Chang.
Yes, so I just on quick read, I'm pulling up the advice we prepared earlier on this issue and recall that the timelines on the various requirements under this ordinance are not the most straightforward, and so we've been trying to parse them. What we had earlier assessed was that the submission of the so stepping back, the BPD submitted the controlled equipment use policies and the annual report simultaneously. And our reading of the ordinance was that the annual report was not required until after the controlled equipment use policies were approved, because the purpose of the annual report is to report on compliance with the controlled equipment use policies. And so what we had assessed at the time when they were submitted was it was a premature submission. And so it's a little bit hard to apply here the language within 60 days of the police department submitting an annual report, because our assessment was that the submission of the annual report was actually premature. So, one kind of off the cuff here, one reasonable interpretation now that the controlled equipment policy have been approved, essentially as of last night, is that the 60 days really starts to run from there, because them having submitted the annual report prior to the controlled equipment use policies being in place, it wouldn't really make sense for the time to start running from the time that they actually submitted it. And so, the annual report requirement really isn't triggered until there is a controlled equipment use policy in place to begin with.
But the problem with that is we have a month of,
recess,
going dark. And then, as the director just said, in order for us to get it, so that gives us 30 days, starting September, let's say. And then in order for us to get it to council in time, we would have to get it to them by their September 20th meeting, if I remember properly. So that doesn't give us very much time. I appreciate you pointing out the 60 days, but that doesn't give us very much time, because we're the same thing. We're not going to come back and meet until September, but we are kind of up against, and our meeting that we have planned is September 14th, which means we'd have to get everything done by the 14th in order to get to council by the 20th.
According to this language, we only have to agendize it for one of our regular meetings.
Okay.
Isn't that what it says?
That's
that
what I
correct?
think it says.
So if that is correct, that means the 60 days is September 24th, 2022, 60 days from yesterday, which is July 26th, which I believe should be September 24th, 2022. We just need to agendize it
For our first meeting in September.
for our first meeting of September. Does that make sense? I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly too. Sorry, I came off video by mistake.
But by agendizing it, does that mean a decision needs to be made that day?
No, we just discuss it.
Okay.
What if we discuss it and then we need more discussion? Can we,
Well, we can discuss it and form a subcommittee.
does that make sense? DCA Chang, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I was just going to endorse the viability of that approach, which is that I read this ordinance's requirement of the 60 days as ensuring that this item remains on track by placing it on the agenda. The action, once it gets placed on the agenda by the board, could be, for example, to refer it to a subcommittee for further analysis and study. This section of the ordinance doesn't place an outside deadline for council approval, and so I don't see you're running up against that. And so I'm reading this only just to require that it be placed on the agenda within 60 days of yesterday.
Director Lee, do you have any comments on that? So because we could
Yes.
agendize it now, maybe.
So I am reading, that all makes sense to me. But now I'm reading the annotated agenda from June 21st, when the council referred the annual equipment use report to the PAB for review and recommendation within 60 days following approval of the remaining use policies. So I kind of read that as they wanted to come back within 60 days, but that could have been a misreading of the ordinance. And so I think it's reasonable to say, well, this is how we read it, especially since the city attorney agrees with us, and just do it that way.
And I will add that the council, that what I'm looking at in terms of my notes on these 60-day issue and when the annual report becomes ripe for consideration is based on the advice that we provided to council. And so I think that the annotated agenda may reflect a slight
Okay.
misreading of the advice that we gave.
Mhm.
Okay. So I agree too, and maybe we could move forward by agreeing to agendize that for the first meeting and just specifying the date of that first meeting. And Director Lee, you only have a couple days left, and if you could do that. But also, I wonder if we need to send a note out to whatever council, noting that that's the path forward. There's a time frame, so there's no misunderstanding about that. Is that necessary? So at least they know.
I kind of don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think they're on pins and needles waiting for this.
Exactly. They have other fish to fry.
They
Yeah.
have plenty to do. I would think that the council's concern simply is that the PAB is doing what it's supposed to do as required by the ordinance.
Okay.
I-
What?
Yeah,
That sounds good. I agree with that. So how about then we agree to agendize it? What is going to be the first date then of our first meeting? Just confirm with everybody.
well, that's the next agenda item.
Yeah. Should we go to the next agenda item, then talk about this in that context?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just double check the agenda here. Make sure I'm on the right month. Board Member Owens has your hand raised.
Well, I just want to ask a question. Kathy, it looks like you proposed that we reschedule our meeting to the 7th based on this use policy. So if now we know.
No.
Is that why you suggested it?
No.
But NACOL is September 11th to 15th.
Oh.
And had we been going, you've been going, you would have been short theoretically a director, investigator, chair, and vice chair.
But that's not happening,
But
right?
that's not happening.
So we could just keep our September 14th.
Right. And my advice would be to keep it to the 14th because, well, for one thing, it's less administrative work. The other aspect is, and now we don't feel pressured, you don't feel pressured by the annual report for equipment use. And the final thing is, we still don't know when the new director is going to be on board.
That's right. I think we need all the time we can get.
Yeah.
To help that person.
Right.
And ourselves.
I think we're done considering, right?
Pardon me?
I think we're done considering.
Yeah, I think you're done considering, and you actually, you don't have to take any action of that. That'll just mean your schedule is remaining as it is.
Okay.
So if you want to go back to 10A and say agendize it for September 14th,
Shall we do that?
somebody could make that motion.
Oh, can someone make that motion to go back to 10A agendized for the 14th?
I'll make it. I'll make a motion we agendize 10A, agendize 10A for September 14th meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Board Member Owens. Thank you, Board Member Calavita. Any objections? Not seeing or hearing any, so moved. Okay, so now we're at 10C, pending investigations by ODPA, policy work by PAB, and ODPA ongoing and restarted other projects such as outreach by PAB and ODPA staffing, including transition to new director, as the interim director.
My apologies. I need a 2-minute break.
Okay, of course.
Okay.
How about everybody take a 2-minute quick break? Okay, we'll wait another brief minute before we start up here. Give everybody some time. Okay. Do we need to wait for folks to come back on camera, Director Lee, just to ensure that they're all here?
I think people are coming back.
Okay, I see them coming back on board. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna share screen, and this is
Okay.
from the supplemental materials that were posted.
Great.
Oops. No, I'm not sharing. Are you seeing regulations? Sorry,
That's okay.
I was seeing regulations. I don't know what you were seeing.
I thought we saw a chart of some sort. Yeah, your
Okay,
task and status.
all right. Yeah, so basically, I put this together and I did not email it to you. I just finished it late this afternoon. And this is something that I wanted to put into narrative form for a couple reasons. One is to do an end of fiscal year report that would go to the council and to you, and serve as a document for your incoming director to know what's going on. So I don't really care for sort of the way that this looks, because I think it could be done in a better way so that people have a better idea of, what has been done, what is ongoing work, and what still needs to be started. So real quickly, in fact, I'm not even sure I need to read it. I'm not going to read through everything because you've got another item on your agenda. Let me just, a couple notes. Automatic license plate readers, I thought this might come back. It doesn't look like it's coming back. It was agendized by Councilmember Harrison for last night. It was postponed to their September 13th meeting. Then there are all these 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We have not been able to start, basically bandwidth issues. 311, that's 311.6 had popped up and you worked on it, it's done. The number 11 is a new item that was that arose when you considered the use policies for tear gas and OC. And then, okay, you know all about the regulations. Here's director search. Maybe your role isn't complete. That's what I wrote, but based on what you've said today. The PERB charge, we don't really have a role in this at this point. We're still waiting for PERB to decide what they're going to do with the allegations. The budget is done. Board member training, you're still working on that. We got a packet of accommodations. Outreach is a biggie, and that is something both the board and your staff will work on. I added strategic planning. We have the money for that, for hiring a consultant, and that I think is also a pretty major task for the board in the coming fiscal year. And I hope that will be a process where it helps you focus on what you're going to do and how you decide, what you're going to take on. I did two separate documents on complaints, and then staff. And this is for when you get the policy person is to, I think one of the things they could do is help to revise the website. The application process for public members of policy subcommittees hasn't been started yet. The investigator recruitment just opened, the permanent investigator, And then the analyst needs some more work. So that your new director will need to work on finishing out the job description for that.
Kathy, are you saying you're going to work some more on this document and then send it to us?
On the analyst?
No, on
No.
this document.
Oh, this, yes. No, it's going to turn into something that's more of a report.
And that you'll send to us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you need to check what you posted as supplemental material.
That needs to come down to.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that I have a pretty good handle on, what is on your plate. And that will be, handed over. I've got files and files, and I'm writing up as much as I can. So basically, I feel that there's a lot to do because I am trying to get the report done in a narrative form. And so it's going to come down to what kind of shape all the files are in. So everything's going to be there. And just because of the way that I am, I would like it to hand it over that all neat and tidy and wrapped up with a bow. Like a person could come in and pick it up and say, oh, here's the status of this and here's what went on. Now that probably won't be true actually for everything, but they will be able to pick up a file and dig through it and figure things out. And then of course, Ms. Thomas will still be around. Yeah. So any questions about that? Board Member Owens.
Yeah, I guess I have a question related to, since we haven't had a director named yet, what do we do in the meantime if we need to reach out to anyone? And I asked this question, I think at the last meeting, you said you would identify someone that would kind of, carry the ball while they're like through this transition period. So I didn't know if you had identified someone we can reach out to. I asked about reaching out to Investigator Thomas, and you said you would identify someone. So I'm just still trying to figure out, what do we do when we're in this? And even once they identify who is the director, it's not going to happen overnight that they're on board. So what do we do in the meantime is the question.
Right. I think at this point, it will be Ms. Thomas that you will reach out to. It's the issue with this position is that it's an appointee. And so nobody can just name anybody, to only the mayor and the council can name somebody to fill these shoes, which is different from a department head under the city manager. The city manager can say, oh, here, here's interim director so-and-so until we find a permanent director.
I have a similar question, and that is, Investigator Thomas, would you be able to, or Ms. Lee, maybe you can answer, if we need for some reason to call a meeting, would Investigator Thomas be able to do that administratively, bureaucratically, and so forth? Would she be authorized to call and host a meeting?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, because that really is a board secretary function, not necessarily a DPA function.
Okay.
So I believe that as an employee, she could certainly, as long as she goes through the motions of everything that's required of the Brown Act, which is, posting and publishing the agenda and all that.
I mean, I don't foresee that, but something could come up.
Something could come up. Yeah. Well, the other thing that's happening is, you should know this, Ms. Martinez is going on a 3-week vacation and I'm getting a temporary admin
Oh,
person.
no.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
Well, it's a good time for her to go because it is August, but, and this was, she'll be out of the country. And at the time that she requested the leave, that made a lot of sense. And I didn't realize there wouldn't be anybody, a director in place. So, be nice to Ms. Thomas.
Congratulations, Ms. Thomas. You have some.
One woman show now. Okay, so
She, she does have ongoing work to do. But she'll be around.
Well, hey, I'm gonna throw it out there, and I know it's going nowhere, but hey, shouldn't she be compensated for this additional work we're potentially be throwing on her? Just throwing it out there.
That's a good question.
I got your back.
There are provisions for, it's called out of class pay, right? And so, Ms. Thomas, you should look into that.
amongst the other hats I'll be wearing, I'll look into that one too. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's it for me. I'm trying my best to leave things in as good hands as I can. So, and also, as I've told everybody, I'm available. I'm sure that when your new director is named, at some point I will sit down with him or her and, and talk about whatever questions they have. And I could, point out to them what are some of the priorities. And so there will be a handoff, even though it's not happening in a seamless way, like from one day to the next, but there'll be one.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
Remember, Calavita, is that your
Yeah.
hand up from before or new?
No,
Okay.
I mean, yes, it's from before.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go on to 10D I, which is consider opening a policy review on the discharge of inebriated individuals from BPD custody. And the number 2, receive update from BPD on its review policies related to the June 9th, 2022 death of an inebriated man released by the BPD. So how about we address, consider opening a policy review?
This is Board Member Ramsey's item.
Yes.
Board Member Ramsey?
Yeah, so this relates to the WEC investigation. And if we're not allowed to initiate a fact-finding investigation that could lead to discipline, I would like to move to open a policy complaint so that we can, I think, understand the facts to see if the policies were adequate, if policies have changed, whether they're adequate now to address situations like that. And I feel strongly about it because if we're not able to investigate for misconduct, we surely should be investigating for policy. And if necessary, I think, this is a question of, exercising our subpoena power to perform our functions and is necessary to learn what happened, which to me is the most important thing related to this event. So that's why I put it on the calendar. On the agenda, excuse me, and that's my motion. To open a policy complaint.
Thank you for the motion.
Yeah,
Would someone?
I want to say it makes clear. I understand that the city attorney is questioning whether we can open, initiate an investigation or a complaint or whatever. I think a policy complaint. Maybe that's not even the word I should use. I actually think maybe it's policy review, or at least a policy complaint suggest a review. And so I think it says specifically that the board may open such a review in the charter itself, and also I believe also in our rules. So that's my motion.
Thank you. Would someone like to second Board Member Ramsey's? Great. Board Member Calavita seconded. Are there any objections? Shall we do a roll call for this, Director Lee?
Sure. I'm sorry, the seconder was Board Member Calavita?
Yes.
Okay. On the motion to open a policy review in the WEC incident, Board Member Calavita,
Yes.
Chair Chang,
Yes.
Board Member Lethwich,
Yes.
Board Member Levine,
Yes.
Board Member Mizell,
Yes.
Board Member Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Owens.
Can I ask a quick question? Where in the charter does it give us the authority to do the policy review? I just want to make sure before.
17A. It's 17A. The board may review policies, practices, and procedures of the police department in its discretion.
Okay, all right, I'm a yes.
Okay, thanks for that confirmation.
And Board Member Ramsey.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Great, thank you. All righty, and with regard to the part 2 of that, receive update from the BPD on its review policies related to the June 9th, 2022 death of the in the WEC case.
I think I asked that question during the chief's
Right.
report. And there
Yeah,
no,
it's been posed. We're hoping for answers.
Mhm.
Yes.
There was no update available, but Lieutenant Turner, who's still on, I think suggested that hopefully we would get to hear something at our next meeting.
That's correct. Thank you. So any other questions on this before we move on to item 11?
Oh, and also, I'm sorry, just to make clear on the policy review, the policies that I think, needed to be reviewed are, and I hope this isn't too late, at least for the record, was I-15, which seems to no longer be in effect, but I would also say policies 900 and policies 411.
I-15 policies 900 and 411.
Any other, in other policies that might apply to that situation. But those are the 3 that I noticed.
Director Lee, were you able to capture that? Okay, great. Board Member Lethwich, and then Levine.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and maybe it's already captured in the minutes, but I'm not sure. It seems like we often have requests of the department, and I'm not sure if we keep track of them and whether we've received responses. So it might be helpful in the future if the minutes don't already capture that, for them to capture requests that were made to the department.
I agree. We have a running, list that we go back to at the beginning of the chief's report.
I think that'd be helpful.
It just seems as though a lot of these requests fall into the ether, and we don't respond back, and maybe someone just needs a prodding. But sure would like to get a response to some of these questions.
Okay.
And a way to keep track of it.
Right.
Thank you. Board Member Levine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in an effort to assist Ms. Thomas, who's put a lot of work into the investigation of this case, WIC, now that it's a policy investigation or a review, and we're going to hopefully get somebody to help administratively with policy issues, data expert, etc., that we all should have open arms to assist in any way in terms of encouraging and facilitating, making it easier for her to continue her work. And thank you in advance for what you've done so far. I'm looking forward to hearing about it, and hopefully this enables you to continue what you're doing in a way that addresses the policies.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Not seeing or hearing any. Let's move on to item 11. Remarks by outgoing interim director of Police Accountability Board.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody, so much, board members and members of the public, for your very kind words about me. It was very touching, and I appreciated hearing them. I think I'm my own worst critic, and so I often am not sure if I'm, living up to everybody's standards, or I just tell myself I think I should be doing better, regardless of what other people think. I often think I'm not doing enough. That being said, I get the sense that people think that I'm not replaceable, and of course, every individual is unique. But in terms of a new director who can lead the agency, who can really hold together the relationships and have a vision, I'm confident. I mean, I don't know the candidates, but I'm confident that there'll be somebody who can do this job. I think equally as important as the technical skills in this work are a person who has the ability to work with a lot of different people and work with people with different interests. And I think, and I mentioned this to the council yesterday, that when the then city manager tapped me for the PRC officer position, she might have recognized my work as a rent board hearing officer, hearing examiner, who saw a diverse, the many diverse parts of our community, and saw people behaving badly, people taking advantage of people, good actors, and basically having to, at least in mediations, trying to bring them together. When I did hearings and made decisions, having them understand their actions and what they did might not have, complied with the law. So, I hope and I trust that your new director will have those qualities of being experienced in really working with different stakeholders, people with different interests. So I did want to correct the chair when he said I stayed an extra month. Actually, I stayed an extra year. Seriously, if it hadn't been for Measure I probably would have retired last year. But I couldn't walk away from the agency. Of course, somebody else could have stepped in, but I really felt that as the PRC officer, I had that institutional knowledge that would be really helpful in the transition to a new agency. And it's been, it's been a challenge. I also told the council it's really been the challenge of my career. I feel pretty proud of it. I also feel a little bit disappointed that it's been a rougher start than I anticipated. But I guess those are the growing pains of a new agency. I mean, in 1973, after the PRC ordinance was passed, it immediately went to court, and parts of it were struck down. So it's not quite as bad. We're not in quite a bad situation this time around, right? Could be worse. Look at the bright side. And so I guess I just want to leave my parting words to you would be to keep your hearts and minds open. Really look for those places where you can and are able to collaborate, and I know it's been difficult with the union, and I wish that they would come to the table. I know they have their reasons, and but if that would be a big step. But I would also implore the board to be open. And I think my take would be that members of the union feel really concerned and maybe a little vulnerable when they talk to the board. And so maybe if you could, find a way that you can do your business in a way that feels more approachable for them. So it's been certainly an interesting year, capping off, I guess, 7.5 years as PRC officer, and then, capping off my 32 years and 10 months here at the city. And I need to thank you, the board, for all your hard work. It's really been a hard year. I hope everybody's looking forward to a break in August, and that you really don't feel like you want to meet. And I really appreciate the thought that you put into your work, your commitment, staying up till 10, 11 o'clock every other week, which I know is hard for people. And really being committed to doing this work and hanging in there when times get tough. So it's, your volunteers, you're all very busy people with other things, a lot of other things going on in your lives. I know that. And so, and I'm gonna especially give a shout out to our young vice chair, because he graduated, he was looking for work, he's taking the LSAT, and so he really, not to denigrate any of the hard work other people are doing, but that was really a lot to take on, and be active in I think you were active, we're still active in the Student Senate, Vice Chair Mizell.
And chairing
and chairing, oh yes,
Reim-
chairing reimagining. So I knew there was something else that I thought that would just put me over the edge, but it was very, very ambitious of him. So, but just an example of his commitment to the community. So anyway, I think that is about all I have to say. And again, thank you so much for your words. That meant a lot to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for your service. I know this is coming towards the end of our meeting, and we have public comment coming up. But we also, are wishing you a great bon voyage, and that you will go on a vacation soon, and you'll have lots of fun and hobbies, and your travel and hobbies. And time with your family in your near future. Do anyone else want to say something before we shift into public comment and then into adjournment?
No, they already spoke.
They've already spoken. So we're going to shift into public comment now. Let's see, who do we have on board here? And let me try to share my screen so that I can get the timer going here. Here we go. Okay, who do we have speaking next?
Carol Marasovic.
So for Kathy, I just wanted to say, you have always been intelligent, consistent, and professional. And another characteristic you have, I didn't realize some of your background. I just knew you were this intelligent, consistent professional who was the staff secretary to this commission, but you're incredibly modest in your whole demeanor and just how you present yourself. Moving to an issue regarding the examining the policy as to the individual who was intoxicated and then just released only to die on the streets. A major issue here is what alternatives did the police have? They may not have wanted to keep him in jail because they didn't see him as having done something criminal. And, you know, perhaps they shouldn't have just discharged him to the streets, but there's a larger issue of where did they have to bring him? And this is why we need a Berkeley-based crisis stabilization center for people who have mental health crisis. Also a situation like him, there should have been some alternative in the community for them to bring this individual to, not just toss him back to the streets. So I hope when you look at the policy, you also look at that issue closely. I mean, it's very important. And I'm sure there are other individuals who have been similarly discharged, but they haven't died. And that doesn't mean that that was the most appropriate thing for them to do. And some individuals who may have been discharged who otherwise were in crisis and needed a place to go to. So I hope you do consider that there needs to be a Berkeley-based crisis stabilization center. Thank you, and good luck, Kathy. I'm sure you are very difficult to replace. Most people don't have those characteristics, and especially in a consistent manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And if I could just make a correction, Mr. Weck did not die on the street. He was discovered on the street and then taken to Alta Bates, where he died shortly thereafter.
Well, same impact. Thank you.
Yeah.
Same impact. He died.
Right. I don't want to take away from the tragedy. Yeah. Okay.
And the manner of his discharge was a characteristic, I think, that can be said, that whether it
yes,
directly caused his death.
Yes. I don't want to downplay anything else. I
Thank you.
I think as a factual matter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Lippman?
Thank you. First, before I neglect, I want to send my appreciation to Kathy, who I served with for several years, earlier on in the late 2010s, 2017, 2018, and before, and wish you the best. I want to bring a few issues having to do with the General Order I-15 and the related issues about the death on the street of the gentleman. From my time in the PRC, I did find the General Order I-15 and sent it to Director Lee and Ramsey and some other members of the board, and the operative part of it, I think. So that should be able to be findable somewhere. I wanted to speak to the issue of the investigation. I recall, and Kathy can probably give a more definitive explanation of this, but the PRC was always able to create policy investigations. And as I recall the terminology, the public member could request or could bring a policy complaint, which was separate and distinct from an officer behavior complaint. So those are the two kinds that they could bring. So policy complaint, and whereas when the PRC created something to do with policy, it was called the policy investigation. Those were really important. There was a clear two-track system within the PRC, individual complaints and policy complaints and investigations. And I think it's really important that we don't lose that strength of the two-track system. The idea is that the PAB is supposed to be stronger and have more resources and a higher profile in city government than the PRC did, not to go backwards and lose that authority. Now, when we're talking about the ability to initiate a policy investigation that will lead to discipline, that is a completely different story. So let's maintain the best of the PRC and then add to it. I want to say that the charter amendment also allows council to assign additional tasks to the PAB without going back to the voters. So if the language of the charter, if you determine it's insufficient, you may ask the council to extend your mandated role. So this is the very tag end of the charter amendment. The board may make recommendations to the city council for enacting legislation or regulations that will further the goals and purposes of this charter. The city council may, based on such recommendations or on its own initiative, enact ordinances that will further the goals and purpose of this article. Is that my time? 3 minutes?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we have Mr. Clark.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Director, and members of the board, I am Charles Clark in District 6. Happy to speak to you on the day after Catherine Lee Day in the city of Berkeley. I guess of all the speakers, Board Member Owen spoke for me when she said ditto, because frankly, that's all I would say about it. But I will add one other D, which I've been impressed by the director's, the outgoing director's performance in the 4 years that I've been following first the PRC and now the PAB, and that is dedication. And I say that fully knowing that she's 2 days away from separating from city service. And I noticed during earlier in the meeting that she was very joyful when she said that's somebody else, that's for somebody else to deal with. So with notwithstanding that, I guess I would put more weight on the fact that she has served for a year longer than originally planned, or preferred at least. And not just putting in the time, but actually putting in the spirit to the work that she's doing. She's been very attuned to the task of civilian oversight of the police. And I've been impressed with how even-handed and thorough her work has been. So that's what I would call attention to. But I tell you what, to make it short, just call that ditto. You know, as my time in Berkeley draws to a close, I thought I'd comment a little bit on the Police Accountability Board that we actually have. The chair's remarks after the public comment at the front end of this meeting were apposite, where all stakeholders should engage in good faith. I have been struck by how much good faith this body has had toward the task at hand. And I appreciate it very much, especially because, you know, frankly, I don't agree with everything that this board has done or that particular members might do. But the bedrock of sincerity, of the honest belief that you're doing the best for the city we live in, really strikes home for me. I think that's a very useful thing. This does lead me to think that you should, you know, the ruffled feathers that I'm sensing at these meetings about things, they are growing pains. There's a matter of finding what is this body, you know, what are the tasks this body can do. So I would always go back to the charter amendment language so as to find that out. And I think that would be a good guidepost for the future. So anyway, thank you very much, Director Lee, for your service. And thank you, board members, for your service.
Thank you. Ms. Saganor?
Sorry, there you go.
Okay, there. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to just pick up where Mr. Clark left off about going back to the language of the charter. And I really appreciate the direction that board member Ramsey was taking in terms of who may make a complaint, and that the language of the charter says a member of the public. And I hope that no matter what else you do revise that to say that a member of the public and take out the part about they must have been a recipient witness to the action. I think that would match the spirit of the charter much better. So please follow up on that. Thank you very much. I am hoping that I may see some of you, think it's next week for National Night Out. The Parks and Rec Department is organizing a National Night Out event, very, very close to where I live. So right in my neighborhood. So my immediate neighborhood doesn't have to go to a lot of trouble to do it. It's going to be done for us. And I plan to go to it. And I know I'll see representatives from the police department there. And I hope I'll see someone from the PAB there as well. And then I do want to close by adding my bit of praise to what you've already heard for the outgoing director. I know that in her interactions with me, a member of the public, she has been really helpful and responsive. And if I've had questions, you're not the only ones who've emailed her with questions. I don't know how many other people and members of the public have emailed her with questions, and she's responded to them. And there have been at least a number of times when she has sent information to me that she knew would be relevant to me, that she wasn't under any obligation to keep me in the loop, but I had been a public member of a subcommittee, and then something subsequent happened with that, and she let me know where it was going next. And I really, really appreciate that. And I hope to encounter you, Ms. Lee, in some future setting, not the PAB, because I think once you've retired, I hope you do move on to do other things. But if you're going to be living in the Berkeley community, which I believe you now are, I hope that we'll share other kinds of community interactions together at some point in the future. Thank you very much for all your good work.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Not seeing other members of the public or hearing any others who would like to speak. We'd like to move to adjournment. So if someone would like to move to adjourn.
I would like to move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Any objections?
No.
Not hearing or seeing any. We are adjourned.
Right.
Bye,
Bye.
Kathy.
Everybody.
Bye, Kathy. Thank you so much.
Hi, you're welcome.